this meeting, which are contained between pages 5 and 16 in your pack. And can I just say as well that the public and the exempt minutes of the last Community Safety and Protection meeting held on the 5th of September are submitted for approval. But if any member wishes to discuss any aspect of the exempt minutes from the last meeting, can you please note that we'll deal with that at the end of this meeting? Okay? Apart from that, can the minutes of the last meeting be approved, please? Yeah. Thank you very much. Right, we now move on to item 4, change of appointment to the authority, and I'll hand over to the monitoring officer, Ria Groves, and the items are on page 17 of your pack. Okay, Ria?
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware that Councillor Maloney sadly passed away a few months ago. St Helens Council confirmed on the 13th of January that her replacement and appointment to the authority will be Councillor Tracy Dickinson. It's recommended that Councillor Dickinson shall replace Councillor Maloney on the same committee she was previously appointed to, that being Policy and Resources and the Scrutiny Committee. The political balance remains unchanged from this appointment. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Ria. Has anybody got any questions or any comments on that? No. So, can the recommendation on page 17 be agreed? Okay, thank you. Move on to the next item, item 5, the financial review 24 to 25, October to December. Head of Finance, James Campbell. And the item is on page 21 of your pack. Okay.
Okay, thanks,
Right.
Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a financial review report which covers the period October to December 2024. The purpose of the report is to provide members with assurance that the approved budget remains robust and that the current forecast of expenditure can be contained within available resources. The report covers the revenue and capital budgets, reserves and treasury management. So firstly, to move on to revenue, the revenue position is covered in paragraphs 7 to 17 on pages 23 to 25. Paragraph 7 outlines the budget movements in quarter 3. Movements relate to the planned use of reserves, the drawdown from the inflation provision to cover the Green and Red Book 2024-25 pay awards and other internal budget requirements. All of these adjustments are self-balancing. They do not impact on the overall net budget requirement, which remains at 74,191,000. After reviewing the income and expenditure, officers have identified the following savings. A summary table can be found on page 25. These savings are 450,000 savings from the non-firefighter employee budget lines. This is a result of staff vacancies arising from a number of personnel not being at the top of the grade and due to recruitment and retention issues. There is additional 100,000 savings, favourable variance in utility costs. We also have a 150,000 increase in investment income, which is declaring at quarter 3, and also a forecast one-off saving from the contingency for pay and inflation of 100,000. As a result of all those adjustments, there's a one-off saving in this report which is identified at 800,000, and members are asked to approve utilising this saving to fund an increase in the capital investment reserve to reduce the level of future borrowing for the authority. So the next category is capital, and capital movements in the quarter are outlined in paragraphs 18 and 19, which are on pages 26 and 27. The programme has been updated for 355,000 scheme additions and changes during the quarter, and a summary table can be found on page 27 at the bottom. These additions include £70,000 on National Resilient Asset Refresh, £10,000 on ICT hardware, and £275,000 drawdown from the Capital Investment Reserve for additional requirements that arose during the end of the TDA building project. Officers have reviewed the current 24-25 capital programme to identify likely scheme start dates and completion dates of the capital schemes, and as a result, 2.8 million have been rephased into schemes 25, 26 and future years. The next section of the report, Chair, covers reserves. The reserves movements in the quarter are outlined in paragraphs 20 and 21, which are on page 28. The table on page 37 outlines the reserve movements in the quarter, and the drawdown from reserves is 331,000. The movement on reserves is broken down on page 23, which include a 32,000 drawdown from the energy reserve, a 23,000 drawdown from the health and wellbeing reserve, which was a contribution towards the British Firefighter Challenge, and finally 275,000 drawdown from capital investment, as previously discussed on the TDA. The final section of the report covers Treasury management, and these are outlined in paragraphs 22 to 27 and pages 28 to 31. The performance of the Treasury management was consistent with the approved Treasury management strategy for the financial year 24-25, but there's some key details to note. That the Bank of England voted on the 18th of December 2024 to maintain interest rate levels at 4.75%. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, measure of inflation, rose by 2.6% in the 12 months to November 2024, and it actually dipped slightly to 2.5% at the end of December. And the authority still envisages that new long-term borrowing of 8 million may be required in the current financial year. However, no new long-term borrowing has been arranged in the first 3 quarters of this financial year. At the end of December, the authority had 46.1 million investments as at the end of December, and the authority's outstanding debt remained at 33.7 million. No new loans have been taken out during the period, and current market conditions continue to be unfavourable for any debt rescheduling. So the key recommendation for members for this report is to approve the proposed revenue and capital budget alignments, to approve the use of the forecast 800,000 saving to increase the capital investment reserve, to reduce future borrowing costs, and to instruct the Director of Finance and Procurement to continue to work with budget managers for the remainder of the financial year and use any savings to reduce the level of capital borrowing. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, James, for your comprehensive report. Has anybody got any questions or any comments on the report? Yeah, Jan?
Comment really, just to say I totally understood from the presentation that we got last week, the week before, about the significance of putting the money back in reserve. That's 800. So yeah, thank you very much. It helps when you explain it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. We don't have many meetings. We have the authority and its 2 principal committees, and they are competent to deal with all matters. And that's why you might say, why is a financial or treasury matter coming to the Community Safety Committee? Because this is the last committee meeting of this financial year, really, before we set our budget in February. And it's to report and agree that underspend, and we always have a little bit of touch wood. Fortunately, over the past few years, we've had an underspend that we've either been able to put to capital, and as we all know, we don't get a capital grant. Some of our revenue has to be appropriated for capital, and or we've got to balance next year's budget. And to do that, we will rely upon a certain level of underspends. That's where we're up to. It's trimming the ship to keep it level and facing into the headwind, which we are doing, and which would put us into a better and stronger position for when the authority comes to make its decision, 27th of February, over the full budget. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, yep. Edna?
Thanks, Chair. I feel a bit silly asking this question, actually, but you know, it's got in November 24, the American election of Donald Trump has made the interest go. I don't understand. What's that got to do with us? I feel dead silly asking this, but...
No, it's not silly at all. What we have to do is, I should have said, really, our Treasury management, we still provided through a service level agreement with Liverpool City Council. And what they do is, what they have to do is take into account the economic conditions internationally, because they all have an impact on us here in the UK and us as a fire authority in Merseyside as well. So any fluctuations, so like the Ukraine war, the oil crisis, anything like that can have an impact on interest rates overall.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, James. And there's no such thing as a silly question. If anybody's got any questions on any aspects, please feel free. Having said that, any more questions or any more comments? No. In that case, are you happy to approve the recommendations on page 21 of the agenda? A, B and C? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you, James. Right, move on to item 6, IRMP 21 to 24, final update. And I'll hand over to the Chief Fire Officer.
Thanks, Chair. Excuse me. The purpose of this report is to request members consider the outcomes of the Integrated Risk Management Plan 2021-24 presented in the attached documents and the recommendation that members now note the outcomes of the 2021-2024 IRMP as it draws to a conclusion. I won't go into the details of why we produce an IRMP in the first instance. I think that's well understood by members, but it does look to address all foreseeable risk across Merseyside and put in plans to mitigate against that risk. But what I will do is I will draw members' attention to aspects of the documentation itself, which if I draw members to pages, so pages 53 and 83 specifically. I will take you through each one of the areas, but I'll firstly start with those areas where we haven't necessarily achieved the ambition of the IRMP, and I'll come back more broadly to kind of comment on the wider area of work. The first one I draw members' attention to was the introduction of what is described as a Scorpion fire appliance into St Helens as part and parcel of the IRMP, CRMP proposals. And all I would say is that vehicle is now with us and in service, and it's in the process of being bollarded out and the right kit and equipment being made available on it. It has taken a long time, and James has just previously referenced kind of some of the factors which affect the procurement process for a vehicle. We didn't anticipate it taking over, well, in approaching 2 years to be able to identify, procure, and then bring the vehicle into service. However, we are very close to doing that, and actually think we will achieve that before the end of the IRMP, so before the end of March. So just so members will be aware why that is currently showing as amber. Then if I draw members' attention to page 83, page 83 is specifically showing as red, and that's under the auspices of continuing to work with North West Ambulance Service to develop an integrated management programme for times of high demand, examples being COVID, and where the fire and rescue service can step in and support the ambulance service in that respect. Where we've been as an authority, particularly emergency medical provision in support of ambulance colleagues, has been in the CRMP and the RMP for a number of years, over the course of the last couple of integrated risk management plans, and is contained within the current CRMP as approved by the authority. But what we have chosen to do is to await national discussions in regards to the role of the fire and rescue service more broadly, and self-evidently the role of a firefighter, and that still remains the view of the authority at this point in time. That work will continues and will be ongoing, and certainly will be ongoing moving forward, where we are able to define fully the role of the firefighter in the context of the role of the fire and rescue service, and we hope and envisage emergency medical response being part of that before we would bring it back to the authority to look at it from a specifically Merseyside perspective. Hence the reason why the two of those particular areas are identified as amber and, in fact, red. The rest of the IRMP proposals then are green, and I'll just talk members through the highlights really before I go into some specific details. So from page 1, 2, 3 onwards, it kind of details the expected outcomes from the introduction of the action. So the first one being to introduce a hybrid duty system at Kirkdale Fire Station. As members will be aware, that duty system is now up and running, and staff are operating from Kirkdale on the basis of that new duty system arrangement, which is really effective and as part and parcel of the increase in the number of appliances that we've got available to us, and the heightened levels of resilience now provided for members of our communities. Similarly, there was proposal to combine Aintree and Croxteth fire stations, and in effect, pages 124 and 125 are one and the same really, and create a superstation and a new training development academy along with National Resilience Centre of Excellence at a new site in Aintree. And members will be more than aware that that facility is now up and running and is really effectively delivering training for our own staff, but training equally nationally and internationally is taking place as anticipated. The next page, which is page 123, under 1.3, provide training for the fire and rescue in support of our roles as National Resilience Lead Authority. That work is ongoing. We've actually got London Fire Brigade currently using our Training Development Academy to assure in relation to their urban search and rescue capabilities and others. And then if we move you on to page 127, to combine the duty systems at Liverpool City and Kensington, that's also being discharged. Action 1.5 is the introduction of the Stinger and Scorpion fire appliance, which actually is a Scorpion fire appliance which we will have purchased. That will be up and running and anticipated to be delivered within this integrated risk management plan, as previously alluded to. And then the next number are all related to specialist capabilities, but the resolution on 1.6a, which is 131, was the relocation of the combined platform ladder from Kirkdale to Liverpool City, and again that's being actioned on the basis of putting our high-reach vehicle into the area which has got the most predominance of high-rise buildings, so that's being facilitated too as part and parcel of this. As I say, there's a number of then sections which talk about specialist capabilities, which I won't go into in any great detail, but all it is about enhancing our capabilities around foreseeable risk. So, likes of having a flood response team, a wildfire capability, hazmat capability, and so on and so forth, have all been discharged through this integrated risk management plan. Overall, I've seen an increase in the number of fire engines available to Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service and the communities that we serve. And then we move on to a number of additional issues which reflect our prevention protection work in regards to discharging those responsibilities as detailed within the integrated risk management plan. And at that point, members, I'll probably pause for any specific questions around the content of the report itself, or indeed any of the specific progress against the actions as detailed. What I would, before I do that, and apologies, what I should say is our processes and the process that we've adopted around integrated risk management planning, we've had them evaluated externally, and that report is on page 183 of the documentation, which was conducted by Liverpool John Moores University, and gives us a comprehensive endorsement of the approaches we adopt to ensure that we are considering all foreseeable risk, we are utilising the capabilities of the people who work in this organisation and the kit and equipment that we're able to procure to secure the best possible outcomes for the communities we serve and to protect them and keep them safe. Thanks, Chair. I'll hand it across to yourself.
Okay, thanks to the Chief for such a detailed report. He's now invited any questions or comments. Anybody wish to say anything on the report? Yeah. Councillor Bynum.
Councillor Grace, please.
Okay.
Sorry, it's a comment, not a question. Page 221, the conclusion of the risk tech, which is highlighted earlier on, saying that they believe that essentially Merseyside Fire and Rescue are underselling their capability, which it's that proactive thing that Merseyside Fire and Rescue are so good at. I just wanted to say that's impressive.
Thanks, Chair. Look, I've got Deb and Jackie sat to my right-hand side here, and they are hugely impactful in the work that we do around integrated risk management plan and the skills that they bring to bear, the logic, the card, the rationale, the thinking that underpins the decision we make you make as an authority and I make as a chief fire officer is hugely informed by Deb and her team. They genuinely are exceptional and should, and this report kind of recognises that. So I just put that on the record. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor.
Thanks. Councillor Byram and then Councillor Page.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just going to say something that would be of assistance to Councillor Page, because he being new, he would say, well, my first meeting, we had this report on the Integrated Risk Management Plan, and I've never seen it again since. What's happened to the IRMP? And that's the thing. We've changed it. The country has changed it from integrated to community. And so this will be the last you probably hear of integrated risk management. From now on, it'll be the Community Risk Management Plan. Why? I don't know. I've no idea actually why they changed the name, but there we are. Somebody will probably tell me, but it seemed a good idea at the time, I suppose. But again, for members for Council Page New, this is our main planning document. This sets out our intent, how we intend to keep the community of Merseyside as the safest part of this country from a fire safety point of view. And it is the management tool by which we judge ourselves, we look back on over a 3-year rolling programme. It's a live document, and if we need to change it, we can and will. And we have, to keep up to date with emerging technology and so forth. But so if you're concerned to know whatever happened to the IRMP, it's now a CRMP. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Page, you've been invited to speak by the Chair of the Authority, so you'll have to say something now.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Les. Mainly is to say a comment, really. I mean, I think it is important that word change to community. I think that's quite a good change for whatever reason, and that's reflected in the positive reports on the targeting of the most vulnerable and the home visits, all of which recorded as being achieved. And obviously we welcome all the references to equipment and all the kit that we provide to operational firefighters and the whole team. But that side of it is of particular interest to me, and I'm really delighted that we're achieving those particular areas of work, because well, I mean, it's obvious that they're important. We know that. I'm just so pleased that we are actually, well, A, that they're on the list, which I knew they would be, but B, that we're actually achieving them. So yeah, thanks to that team who are involved in that aspect of the work.
Thanks very much. Do you want to comment at this stage, Chief?
No.
Oh, you're going to resist. Okay. Right, Lynn.
I was just going to say, for me, page 220, there's 2 little lines there that just says it all. In our view, evidence of significant achievements managed by a service at the time when complex pressures on the service not always under our control. And that says it all, really, doesn't it? And I think, you know, don't want to turn it into let's all pat each other back, but it has to be recognised, doesn't it? Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. Is there anybody else? No. I'll hand back to the Chief then.
Thanks, Chair. And I purposely chose not to go into any great detail around the work that we do around getting into the heart of our communities and protecting people through the preventative work we're going to do, because we're going to have a presentation around some of that work from Mark around the bonfire period, but actually we've got a report which analyses some of the work that we do in communities around reducing the incidence of accidental dwelling fires and fire deaths and injuries on our communities, and that would have given me the opportunity to really kind of extol the approaches that we've adopted in Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service. What I would say, though, there's a reason why we are outstanding in regards to the preventative work that we do. And what you'll see within the integrated risk management plan and the objectives as described is we do over 50,000 home fire safety checks and over 10,000 safe and well visits, which are a heightened version of an initial home fire safety check, really targeted on the most vulnerable people in our communities. And you know, and what we've had from an evaluation from Liverpool John Moores University and endorsement from His Majesty's Inspector that the work that we do is outstanding. The bit that I do draw you into is the evaluation of the approach that we adopt to, which self-evidently the external view is the approach that we adopt there is outstanding too. So there is a reason why I'll talk about the fatalities reports in a short while, but the reason why we are really effective, and that's down to the people who work in this organisation, to be fair, but it's quite right and fitting to acknowledge the work that we do outside of the operational response, the preventative work, the protective work that we do to ensure the people of Merseyside are protected. So I thank Councillor for highlighting that particular issue, and I will do so again in a short while.
Okay, thanks, Chief. So can the meeting agree the recommendation on page 45 of the agenda? Agreed. Thank you. Move on to item 7, which is the bonfire report for 2024. I'll hand over to the Chief, and I believe as part of this item, Area Manager Mark Thomas will be giving us a presentation, but over to the Chief.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll just introduce the report, then my intention is to hand over to Area Manager Thomas to go through the specific detail of the report itself, and then Mark will hand it back to me because I want to talk specifically about some of the things that happened over the course of this previous bonfire period, which we will look to address moving forward. So I'll particularly focus in on that particular area, but Mark will give you a high-level overview of the performance of the service up until passing it back to myself. But the purpose of this report is to update members on the outcomes of the bonfire period 2024. It's also recommended that members note the contents of the report and the commitment and endeavours of Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service in the delivery of the bonfire plan through Operational Bangor 2024, and note the increase in incidents this year and the intention of officers to develop a clear and ambiguous position statement in relation to approved community bonfires which meet clear safety requirements and others developed without appropriate safeguards in place to protect the public. The second recommendation is the one which I will talk to with some more detail. So, Mark, I'll hand it across to yourself in the first instance, please.
Elected members for the opportunity to just put a bit of context behind what the Chief will talk to in terms of the report, which you are all furnished with. So, planning for Operation Bangor, which is what we respond to over the bonfire period. Thank you, Shauna. Planning began, you may recall, members, that we talked around about the same time last year about Op Bangor 2023 and some of the challenges that presented to us, some unusual challenges and certainly some new challenges, particularly in terms of larger community bonfires. After Op Bangor 23 and after we'd spoken to elected members, we brought a debrief under the LRF, the Local Resilience Forum, attended by police, fire, local authorities and Merseytravel, along with other partners. That took place in February of 2024, and what that highlighted to us was good practice in terms of partner working together, but equally it highlighted some areas that we wanted to focus down on. So, as an example, Merseytravel raised the fact that because of violence at work, because certain bus routes had been attacked, the bus routes had been stopped. So for us, that did not represent success. Success for us is safe communities over the bonfire period and vulnerable people not being confined to their own homes because they can't get out because there is no bus. So we understood that things were changing a little. We saw the landscape shift, and we held a multi-agency tabletop exercise in 2024 of last year. Okay, and that involved police, local authority key players, and we looked at what was happening right across Merseyside. We kind of understood what would happen in terms of community planning around bonfires. So we held an exercise at TDA for everybody to be involved in. Those exercises highlighted the risk of those large-scale community bonfires and also the importance of us as partners working together to push the risks into communities so that they were aware of what those potential risks might be. And we have to say that communities worked with us really well around that planning period. What do we do over the bonfire period? I think most members will be aware that we deploy a Trojan fire engine. So what that does, that goes into areas of particular antisocial behaviour, areas that the police might highlight to us of concern, and equally areas that our crews will highlight of concern. That appliance deploys with firefighters on board along with police officers. Equally, on the right-hand side of this slide, you see a tipper truck. So we have 6 of these deployed over the Op Bangor period. And you can see some of the figures there, the materials that the crews removed from the streets of Merseyside, a total of around about 59 tonnes over the period of Operation Bangor. And down to the right-hand side, you see that we deploy our staff on 3 key nights. So that's the 30th of October being Mischief Night, the 31st of October being Halloween, and of course the 5th of October being bonfire night. So we step up our staff and we put them into areas where we know we can work closely as a fire and rescue service, but critically closely with our partners. So this is the outcomes from this year. You'll see it down the right-hand side there, the infographic. All of the detail is contained within the report that you are furnished with, members. So there's the 6 tipper trucks we talked about, 59 tonnes. It talks about violence at work and how many bonfires we attended. On the left-hand side, you will see that we had a significant upturn in antisocial small fires over this Operation Bangor period, and that has caused us some concern. So you will see since the pandemic, if I indicate this is 2020, pandemic time, things stopped, people went back, people being on the street in terms of communities getting together slowed down. That appears now to have ramped up. There are a few areas around that. We have some theories, including weather, which didn't help us out this year. Weather was a lot warmer over the Operation Bangor period. And we are embarking on evaluation, and again, that is contained within the report. Nothing spectacular in terms of cumulative daily totals. So you'll see the top line there is 2024, that's 357, so that's what we're talking about today. In terms of the trend, there isn't anything spectacular other than it is twice the number that we've done in previous years. You will see the number below, the 357 is 320, that indicates the 10-year average. Just an indication of some hotspots. Pan Merseyside, 357 deliberate secondary fires. The wards where the most fires occurred were Belle Vale with 22, Norris Green with 20, and if we look at Bidston and St James and Birkenhead and Tranmere, a combined 28. We attended 19 incidents which involved fireworks, 7 of which in Liverpool North, and unfortunately again, violence at work features in this Op Bangor period. And violence at work is things such as eggs being thrown at eggs being thrown at prevention staff, bricks being thrown at our fire appliances, people attempting to open lockers of our fire appliances while we're in attendance, fireworks being discharged in the vicinity of fire crews doing their job, youth throwing objects at appliances, and again, objects thrown by a youth in an area of Liverpool. So before I hand back to the Chief in terms of the recommendations in the report, just a few pictures. So we talk about community organised bonfires, and we work with the community, we work with local authority, we work with our partners, and we talk about what's acceptable, and we talk about what's not going to present the higher risk. And I have to say that communities work with us, and they're really helpful. And in some respects, it appears as though some of these bonfires and some of the materials that are being delivered to the bonfires are not being done so by the local communities, and it feels like there's something organised outside of those agreements that we've been having. So the image on the left, if we can show you a scale, there's a man standing there, a gentleman standing there. That's approximately 6 or 7 stories of clean pallets, which were usable pallets. It's the same bonfire you see at the side of it. Thousands of people have come together to see this particular event. This is a separate event, and this highlights the point of clean pallets, usable, serviceable, being delivered to this particular event that was organised by the community. And again, the scale there, you've got somebody on top of the bonfire, and this is the bonfire after it was built here. And you may not be able to see the scale on this, but I'll try and give you some indications. So this is the bonfire. This green sign you see down here, that's an Asda, that's a local Asda. This here is a row of terraced houses. This is about an 8-storey bonfire, so equivalent to an 8-storey block of flats, give or take. And the key bit to take away for us, and in particular in respect of professional view of this as a fire officer that's done this for a fair old time, there's an arc here. There's thousands of people that you may or may not be able to see. There's an arc here, and there's nobody standing there. There's nobody standing there for a reason, because it's too warm to be there. Very close back to that arc is a row of terrace properties. And you'll see on this particular fire, the way the fire is going. Now that indicates to us that the wind is taking the fire away from those properties. And that's the wind that's doing us a favour there. And potentially the wind is not always going to do us a favour. So that caused us some real concern when we worked here with the police on bonfire night. We're able to observe this in the Silver Liaison Room with our colleagues in Merseyside Police. We're also able to talk to our people who are on the ground, that particular instance, in terms of prevention staff, but equally in terms of operational fire crews who are saying that that is bordering on unacceptable. And members, I will leave you with that image and pass back to the Chief Fire Officer.
Is this our drone picture? Is it our drone?
So this drone is taken from, this photograph is taken from drones that are uploaded into YouTube. So you'll see a lot of citizen journalism around this in particular. And the photograph on the top right-hand side, in fact, was taken from a, a content provider on YouTube. So they're there with their drones, they're getting their content, and then all of a sudden, a 12-ton flatbed turns up and just drops off a whole heap of pallets that are usable. And we've had other information from other partners that, you know, it's not just pallets. People indeed are charging in certain areas for people to bring old furniture, old sofas, old beds to put onto bonfires. So it's starting to become something that we need to be concerned about, which talks to the recommendations that the Chief is about to talk about.
So can I just ask, sorry, before you, is that an organised community thing? Did people think that was okay to organise that? And you talking about sofas coming, I mean, you don't know what materials are being burned, do you?
Well, before Mark answer, that's exactly what I'm going to go on.
Sorry.
Look, I'll explain a little bit more detail. Mark, do you want to come and join us at the table, if that's okay with members? Because self-evidently, I may well defer up to Mark on a couple of bits.
Okay, can I just say thanks to Mark for the presentation, and if you stay for the discussion now, I'll hand back to the Chief and then we'll throw it open for questions and discussion then. Okay, thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chair, and hopefully some of the things that I will say in the explanation I will provide will answer a number of the questions that the authority members may well have. What I would say is that the image that Mark has brought onto the screen exemplifies the reasons why I will take you through the basis of the report moving forward, because he is quite right. There is an image of a large bonfire, and as Mark's quite rightly pointed out, the radiant heat from that bonfire has pushed back members of the community, but the wind is going in a favourable direction for us. If that wind was going in the other direction, not even at a great level of speed, then we would have significant problems, and so would the properties in the close vicinity of that bonfire. So when we talk about acceptable, that from me as the Chief Fire Officer, that is not acceptable. The question was posed, how was this community, was it a community event? Yet the two examples that Mark's given were community events. And that's part and parcel of us understanding what the expectations of the Fire and Rescue Authority are, the local authority are, policing colleagues and a number of key stakeholders in relation to the size of an event such as this. And if you recall, I referenced within the recommendations probably the difference between a community event which meets safety requirements, and we need to define what those safety requirements are and what the expectations of all its key stakeholders are, and those developed without the appropriate safeguards in place, and be able to differentiate between the two. But it is clear from me, and Mark is in a similar position to me, I've done 35 years in the service, and I recognise over the course of the last few years a decline in the number of incidents that we've responded to. Some of that is linked into the huge, progressive, bonfire plans that we put in place to mitigate against the risk, to remove bonfire materials, to work with communities. And and we've seen it, the numbers decline significantly. Then we moved through COVID, and and clearly COVID had an implication on the number of incidents that we'd responded to. There appears to be a bounce back, but the bounce back to pre-COVID times is significantly more concerning than it was pre-COVID, and it's on the basis of large-scale bonfires being developed, and equally being, and arguably I'd be cautious of my language really, but be encouraged and supported and kind of reinforced that is an acceptable provision in a community. And it also, if I'm being blunt, it also reflects the fact that a large number of the community events that were previously put on by local authorities around firework displays and so on and so forth, due to austerity, no longer exist. So, the community, in the nicest possible way, and people in the community have stepped into a void left by the local authority in that regard, but they don't necessarily understand and manage risk in the same way as the local authority would do, or indeed we would expect as a fire and rescue authority. That said, I feel it's probably as important, for me, and I don't normally do this, members, as you well know. I normally just talk to you and explain the kind from a logical point of view, really. But I do think it's important that I take you through the report, and particularly page 238 of the report in a little bit more forensic detail. So I'm not going to apologise for the fact that I'm going to read out from paragraphs 4 to paragraph 17, because it will describe the absolute intent of the authority moving forward and the expectations that we will have on key stakeholders moving forward, and that clear and unambiguous development of a position on behalf of the authority that says we want to keep our communities safe. We want them to enjoy the period of the bonfire period. We're not going to seek to destroy something which is steeped in history. But what we do need to be assured of is that we are looking after their safety and their well-being and their property. And what I don't want to be doing to you as authority members, or anyone else for that matter, is reporting back that we've had someone injured or die as a result of an uncontrolled bonfire. So, so for that, self-evidently, that is something that is absolutely, part and parcel of this report, and that position that we will take moving forward. So it says, paragraph 4, reading onwards, Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service traditionally receive a significant increase in calls for service over the Halloween and bonfire period. In order to limit those demands, our annual bonfire plan was implemented to mitigate against the number of 999 calls and the overall number of antisocial behaviour fires. Given the post-COVID relaxation of community restrictions and a cut in the local authority funding, there was also a notable increase in unregulated community-run bonfire events, and that was through 2023, which is what Mark references. As a result, the Local Resilience Forum convened a multi-agency exercise to address the issues. We wanted the partners to understand the issues that would affect the fire and rescue service, and that kind of evolved into trying to manage and regulate the bonfires a little more, and we will return to that in a second. On the 4th, 5th and 6th of November, now and previously we've taken to bonfires in a really tolerant manner. Bonfires are risk assessed to allow them to continue to burn if they don't present a problem to the public. And that's been a regular occurrence. We understand that people would have bonfires over the period. If they were safe, well managed, they had an ability to extinguish the fire because of, they've got a length of hose next to them, garden hose, then, comfortably we will allow that to kind of continue. In the nicest possible way, members, the image that you see on the screen, no one would be able to put out with a garden hose, or a garden hose from every property surrounding it for that matter. It is, however, and always has been the preference of Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service that bonfires do not form part of the celebrations, given the blight that they have on the environment, and that shouldn't be missed, and the unseen effect it has on vulnerable members of the community. So sometimes, whilst other people are enjoying a bonfire period, some other people aren't, but they're not able to voice that opinion loudly enough, and in such a way which people would understand the kind of detrimental impact it has on individuals during the period. The risk to members of the public at such unregulated events is also growing a concern to the authority, a matter we will be raising with our partners in preparation for the forthcoming bonfire period. As we say, the wind blows in the other direction, we have significant problems. It was notable through social media monitoring that the content creators of social media platforms We're reporting frequently in respect of the bonfire sizes, which causes a perceived competitive approach from those organising the bonfires. And throughout Bangor, the planning process, it should be noted that local communities were engaged in bonfire events, although it was evident that the same community members raised concerns when more individuals became involved and the bonfires grew. So in effect, what we're saying there is, social media and more widestream media started to kind of, in some way, probably inadvertently, encourage bonfire building, and that bonfire building extended to other parts of the community as well. But it become acceptable. It's clearly not acceptable. Certainly unregulated bonfires are not acceptable for the authority or the service. We're clear that the media influence give our communities the impression that unregulated bonfires were acceptable, and there would be no likelihood of ramifications related to the risks they propose. Like there are ramifications to the risks they propose. That is absolutely not the case. And that's from a multiple number of areas, to be perfectly honest with you, around ramifications from fire, police and other partners. But the biggest ramification is the fact that inadvertently someone could kill a member of the community because of an unregulated bonfire event taking place, or a fire spread from an unregulated bonfire into a property. That the ramifications of that are felt by communities tenfold, and we need to avoid that at all costs. It's also noteworthy social media content shows legitimate businesses dropping usable goods at sites for larger bonfires. So as Mark's alluded to, and the image shows, there's a truck with, 100 odd pallets, which are, clean burning in a nice possible way, and certainly part and parcel of that endeavour by probably the community organisers to ensure that they were clean burning. But the fact of the matter is they have value, and the scale and size of the bonfire as a result of businesses dropping pallets off is to be avoided. And we will be engaging those businesses in those conversations, because they are not helping matters, and they will be culpable if we lose someone as a result, or injure someone as a result of those bonfires. They need to understand that. It's the view of the authority that only events approved by the Safety Advisory Group would be supported. Again, I return to the fact that we understand that there may well be bonfires taking place and fireworks over that bonfire period, but they need to be safe, they need to be regulated, and they need to follow the rules and as described, thereby ensuring that suitable safeguards are in place for those involved in running the events, because their safety is paramount, and those attending the events. And you'll have seen, when there's an image there of a young man on top of a bonfire, which is maybe 3-4 floors. When you get to 8 floors and you haven't got no fall arrest, then the tumble from something as high and significant as that would cause significant damage to the individual. Now, we have to take responsibility for that, particularly as if we are endorsing the site in the first instance. Officers are currently developing an unambiguous statement in this regard, which will deal with the position of the authority alongside the expectations we place on our partners and stakeholders in this regard. We will be clear around what is acceptable and what is not acceptable from a fire and rescue point of view, and we will be clear with our partners as much as our communities. However, the wider context will always be considered in relation to community impact and reductions in anti-social behaviour of a well-managed, regulated community bonfire event, subject to the safeguards being in place. As I say, events took place all over local authority areas, but they were controlled and managed and facilitated through the local authority with proper due diligence in place, and we need to be assured that the community events follow the same principles and the safeguards. Officers are currently working with local resilience forum partners to establish and understand the increases in the number of incidents that have occurred, and put that into the kind of context of reductions in antisocial behaviour elsewhere. We do understand that the bonfire is a diversionary event, which over the key 3 nights can have a positive impact on the broader community. But the fact of the matter is, not when fires escalate in an uncontrolled manner across Merseyside, and indeed the risks of the fire spreading are evident. And this insight will inform the development of the authority's policy in that regard. But let me be clear to members, as your chief fire officer, that is not acceptable to me or any member of Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service, and by default I would hope the authority. We want to work with our communities, we want to work with our partners, but we will absolutely be clear on what our expectations are moving forward and what safeguards we need to have in place to be able to assure ourselves that that is a safely run event which is not going to cause death and injury to a member of our community. I'll pause at that point, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Chief. But before I throw it open, can I just say a couple of points myself? I think, as an authority, we need to give support to the message that Mark and the Chief are putting out today. As part of his presentation, Mark highlighted Bidston and St James's ward in Birkenhead. Well, for my sins, I'm actually a councillor in that ward. 2 of these massive bonfires were held in that ward. One, as shown on the screen, in Ilchester Road by Birkenhead North Station, and the other one was on the Beechwood Estate. And I went to visit both, sites for a few days before and on the evening of bonfire night. Now, whilst we must recognise that there are some people who say, oh, this is fantastic, we're having a great time, and they've got the kids there with lemonade and crisps, and they think it's brilliant. There are other people, and I did get emails off residents who said they were scared stiff, because they were scared, and it's been highlighted about the fire and the direction it's going. If it had gone the other way, there could have been a disaster. So on the one hand, we don't want to be seen to be ignoring views of residents who think this is wonderful. But at the end of the day, look at who we are, and we've got to protect people, and we've got to make sure people are safe. So at the end of the day, I think we must recognise that the message that's coming across from Mark and the Chief is so important that we've got to give them total support on this, knowing that some residents won't be happy, and they might have a go at us and saying, you're spoiling our fun. But I think we've all got a responsibility to make sure that this issue is dealt with in a proper way. So I would hope, before I throw it open, that we will give full support to the message we're getting this afternoon. Thank you. Edna?
Thanks, Chair. Mine is the size of the fire, the Woodhall sector. As I say, as the authority went round, the local authority, couldn't they have said that that's too high? Some of it must be moved, because the height of it, I think, looked terrifying. And I mean terrifying. As I say, the wind, fortunately, was going the right way. The vision of it going the wrong way is just, it's mind-blowing. It really is scary. And I think it's up to, if the authorities knew that was there, I think it was the authority to say, yeah, have your bonfire, but there's no need for it to be that high. That was just asking for an accident to happen, to me anyway, personally. Thanks, Chair, thanks.
Do you want to come in now, Chief?
Yeah,
Yep.
thank Councillor Finnan. I agree. I suppose, the learning here is to be absolutely clear on what the expectations of the community bonfire builders, if that's the descriptor, are, and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and clearly manage and monitor that over the period. And so that's why there's a reference to the safety advisory group in regards to being clear on the stipulations and what safeguards are in place and what risk assessment is required, and what means of extinguishing a fire are, what the means of controlling the crowds are, and so on and so forth. All of those things will factor into the discussions and the debate that we have with those key stakeholders to say these are our minimum expectations of a community event. If you can facilitate that and it can be done and it can be done safely, that's absolutely fine. The community event can continue. However, if you can't give us those assurances and you can't give the local authority in that regard the assurances, then the event won't take place.
Councillor Lamb.
Thanks, Chair. First up, thanks to the authority for the amount of work they did go in. I know as a local councillor, I found it quite reassuring in advance of Bonfire Night that we had people that we could talk to, and within the councils as well. I know on Wirral we've had quite a good detailed briefing specifically on Wirral, and that involved the Director of Neighbourhoods who came along. Again, it was a really good discussion. I mean, we're a really strange country, aren't we? Like, for historical reasons, we like to set fire to a load of stuff, maybe once a year, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. Yeah, we won't talk about that. Why? It's very strange. I did have some of my fellow councillors when the Greens were very concerned about air quality and the fact that we're supposed to be burning less stuff anyway. I know it's a tricky balance. you could have 3 big bonfires and it could be less harmful than, 1,000 small bonfires. So I'm quite open to that as well. I guess the specific question around the work for this year is when will local authorities hear more about what the kind of guidelines are, and how can councillors here kind of work with the authority on to kind of better work together on that?
Yeah,
Thanks.
look, I suppose to some degree they already have. So and you wouldn't be surprised if our local authority colleagues are supportive of the things that we are saying. They understand and recognise the challenges that we're faced over that period, and indeed the risks attached to unregulated events occurring across any local authority area for that matter. So those conversations have already commenced, and they are supportive of this unambiguous kind of position and being clear in regards to what we would allow and what we wouldn't allow. So that is a continuum. We work really, as we all know, we work really effectively as a partnership, not just in the local resilience forum, but also extends into the work we do every day in communities with the local authority. So we are in the same headspace, if that makes sense, which makes things a little easier. But we will be confirming very, very shortly post this meeting, what we think is that that unambiguous position that we will adopt, and we will be clear. And and if it's we know, picking up Councillor Kenny's kind of reference to the community, we know that some parts of the community might push back a little bit. We will seek to engage the community and explain, and we seek to kind of make sure that they understand where we're coming from. As I say, a safe, controlled, event is fine with the requisite safeguards in place. We're just not convinced that the requisite safeguards were in place on a couple of events which we would need to revisit. But we will be clear next time, and we will provide other vulnerable members of the community with that assurance. But we will also work with our key stakeholders in regards to being clear on our expectations of them, as well as the expectations that they should have of us.
Thanks, Chief. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thanks, Brian. I just want to say, I seen photos of this getting built a couple of weeks before, and was waiting for it to not be there no more. So I thought somebody would have gone in and removed it, because you could see from the size of it, it wasn't going to be a little bonfire. And I probably understand why people didn't go in, because the amount of people there viewing it, it probably would have caused a big uproar anyway. But my question is, can we work next year with the people who organised this? Because they're going to do it again, because to them that was a big success. They don't see the dangers or nothing like that. So can't we work with them earlier on in the year to say, this is an acceptable size, or this is an acceptable plate? Because even without it being that big, it can't be held there anyway because of the winds in the houses. So isn't there like a way we can work to go forward?
Yes, absolutely, and that's exactly what we're saying. So if I suppose to some degree, if you've got someone who wants to run a community bonfire event in 2025, arguably, then we would expect them to approach the local authority to say, we want to run an event. We're confident we can run that safely, and we would look for that the local authority to sign off on the event, right, as it being a safely well-managed event based on a raft of criteria that someone would have to be able to demonstrate that they could meet. And that extends to things which are tough for communities to be able to discharge around indemnity, insurance, and so on and so forth, and having people there to safely patrol the site and make sure that no one's at risk, and all of those things. But we are happy to work with the community, and we're happy to work with members in the community. But what we have to be clear on about is what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And that's where we start to kind of be clear, define what those parameters are, and then to some degree make sure those parameters are met. Because in the nicest possible way, it's lovely if you are a resident in that area and you think you can run a community event until someone dies. And then in the nicest possible way, either the community turn on that particular individual for it not being a regulated event, or they kind of question the veracity of the key stakeholders have responsibility for this, police, fire, local authority in regards to how was that allowed in the first instance. And we are being clear here, we are not, you know, we are not supportive of events such as that to the size and the extent that it was. But we need to now define what size it should be and what parameters should be in place and how to run an event safely. Because, you know, we will still get people to go. If it was half the size of that, right, people would still attend because there's other things going on. You could buy burgers and ice creams and all sorts of that. You know, it doesn't have to be to the size and the scale. It doesn't have to be a competition between one community and another community, because that then has the propensity for that 8-story building to be 9 stories, to be 10 stories next time. It collapse, it kills someone, the wind change, and it destroy 6-7 houses in an estate. That is not acceptable to us, absolutely, fundamentally not acceptable. And we will work with the community and we will work with our partners, but we are being clear around the position that the authority will take moving forward and the unambiguous nature of that.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bynum.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We welcome this, members welcome this, I'm sure, because this is something you, Chair, and the Chief and I have spoken about, these developments bubbling up. It may well be that in many other local authority areas they've got similar experience that. We've had this particular experience over a number of years. The idea, as I say, bubbles up. Somebody says, yeah, well, we'll just organise a community event, because there used to be community events organised by the local authority, and for a number of reasons that might not be happening. So somebody says, bright idea, we'll do this. So then you say, well, where's your safety plan? Where's your safety plan? Yeah, we'll work that. And how are you going to allow emergency vehicles, ambulances? What are you going to do with first aid? What are you going to do about this? What's your contingency plan? Oh yeah, we work, and never do. And they just have no planning. They're just having an event. And it becomes fueled by other things. We're going to build a bonfire so big you'll see it from space. That's what we want. It's we don't care. But no thought or consideration whatsoever for the consequences. And that's what's unacceptable. A well-organised, we're not being killjoys, a well-organised community event with a proper plan. If you need St John Ambulance, the Red Cross there, organise that. If you need to have, an emergency escape evacuation route, how the ambulance is going to have that plan. If you don't do all that planning, you're planning to fail. And that's what you need to stop. And this is a good idea. Let's have this plan. The problem with it is going to be enforcing it. Because if Joe Bloggs, who's organising this event, says, oh yeah, we'll get all this plans, we'll do all of that, yeah, we'll have all that, and they don't, and you say, right, I'll tell you what, you light that fire, we'll send our fire engines down, we'll put it out, there'd be a riot. There'd be an absolute situation of civil disorder. So that's the game of chess that you're playing here, of we want to put the rules of the game in place. If you play with the game, there can be a winner, an outcome. If you don't play with the game, then we've got to have the plan for what we do next. And that may not be as easy as we, well, obviously not as easy as we think.
Okay, does anybody else want to make any comments at this stage? Yeah, Councillor Grace.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't know, it might be a really daft idea, but would it help if between us all we've got a big reach in leafleting if we made a point on a leaflet to point people to a central place of information, so it just to sort of raise its profile? It's just a thought that between us we across the region we hit a lot of people.
Take any other comments. I know Councillor Thompson wanted to come in, and then Councillor Rennie, and then if there's nobody else, I was going to invite Mark if he wanted to come back and make any comments on the discussion, and then I'll hand back to the Chief to wind up. Okay.
Well, just a thought, going back to that image of the pallets being delivered in quite a professional way, really. Have we got no outreach where we can say to companies or firms like that, do you think that is a really appropriate thing to do? I just think whoever thought that was a really good idea, it's good for them because they're getting rid of all their...
Well, next year I'll describe that as fly tipping.
Yeah.
Let me be absolutely clear, and anyone who drops off their couch, their doors, their bits of their fence, I'll be describing that as fly tipping as well, and the prosecutions will follow.
Okay, Councillor Rennie.
Thanks, Chair. I was just going to comment really because it's not new in this area for things like this to happen. I can go back sort of 40 years, and they weren't, excuse me, they weren't as severe as they are as this particular night, but there has been a long history there. And without giving Brian, where too many rosettes to wear Brian, I think the influence that you were having there has, it could have been far worse if you hadn't have done that, you and your colleagues. So it's not very often. Excuse me, I'm croaking even worse today. But
Carry on.
probably,
Move an extension. Move an extension.
no, it must be smoke in my larynx or something. I don't know. But I think as far as elected members are concerned, Wirral was extremely worrying. I know that you put in a lot of work on that, so clearly, you'll probably have reflected and already, as most of us have, and said, what could we do a bit differently? But the work that went on from the local councils, I have to say, was a good demonstration of let's all work together. So we've got something to build on there, thank goodness. But we have to start, and Councillor Lamb mentioned only last week, I think it was, by now the time goes so quick, but we had one of the senior officers meet up with us at Birkenhead Fire Station to go through all this, and clearly we'll be keeping on his back to work with you, and that won't be a problem. I know it won't, because officers, with members as well, from all parties are more than willing to, get stuck in with this really, because we can't let this escalate as it is. It was just dreadful. So, not wishing to put more work on Brian's back, because I clearly know that he's already shown great concern with it. But I think we have to get the local authority around that table more often. And we can do that, between the various members that we've got here from Wirral. But that sort of behaviour cannot happen again. That's the message. And the ones that the council used to put on, was more of a very small family affair. There used to be one in the area where I live, and it was exceptionally good, well run. There's no comparison in what we're dealing with here to what went on there. So again, there's obviously work to be done within that area, and I have to say, on Wirral, we're all committed to helping the councillors from that area get a good result from it, because this behaviour cannot happen again. It goes back, as I say, years and years, and we can't let it rear its ugly head for very much longer. So, I'm sure everybody around this table will hopefully back Brian and back the Chief, and also the officers as well that met up at Birkenhead Fire Station last week. So we have got something to build on, and we need to start building on it now, and get on with the job really, and let's get these, let's get the parameters embedded within the community there from now on. And as I say, you've got all party support on that. So that's where we stand at the moment. But let's get on with it, and let's start talking about it now, not wait until nearer on Fire Night next year.
Okay, thanks very much. Any other comments? No. If I'll invite Mark, if you've got any further comments you want to make, Mark. And then I'll ask the Chief to wind up.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Really, I've heard everything around the table, and as your head of prevention at Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service, that presents me with some huge challenges, and everything around the table that's been discussed is valid, and in particular around the community organising these events. And the community have been helpful. They've not been unhelpful in any way, and they've worked with us. They've worked with my officers on the ground to discuss what the parameters look like, what risk looks like, what safety looks like. And then all of a sudden it becomes out of their hands, and it feels as though there's something else organising this behind what they're doing. So we then get this competitive, our bonfire's bigger than your bonfire. And I have to say as well, members, this is not a Wirral specific issue. We have clearly, as Councillor Rennie said, we did have a discussion over Birkenhead Fire Station. Really interesting, and Wirral no different to anyone else in terms of the support that they've offered us in addressing this, because that's all we're getting. We are getting support in addressing this. The Chief Fire Officer mentioned, about experience of myself and his own experiences in terms of our tenure. And there are many senior officers, and I say senior in terms of tenure, who have not seen anything like this previously. And the image there just causes me a sleepless night. That can't be acceptable. And there's a real dichotomy here, and the dichotomy is this. Councillor Kenny talked about crisps and lemonade, and the dichotomy is this. Antisocial behaviour reported by Merseyside Police went down over the 3 key nights. So it's almost like, well, there's a success. Now, it's a happy coincidence that it was a success, in my view. And that, you know, here in Langers, like, we were lucky that the wind was doing this. We were lucky that you know, it's fortunate that that's not language that we deal in. You know, we deal in absolutes. And if we get that wrong, and back to the experience of some officers in the organisation, we've seen the outcomes. And it's not, you know, it's not a bad day at the office. It's the worst day for an entire community there. So I'd like to thank you all for your comments. And equally, we've talked about local authority neighbourhood management being involved in community safety looking forward. And we've already started those conversations. Please be assured about that. And we will continue those conversations as we progress. We've got some time now in terms of planning towards Bonfire 25. So we will progress this based on the recommendations in the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, over to the Chief.
Mark summed that up quite nicely, to be fair. All I would say is, you know, we do want to work with those communities. You know, I'm not averse to a family going out and visiting a bonfire over the bonfire period with a bottle of lemonade and a packet of crisps. I just want to make sure that they go home the same way in the evening. And that's about putting in parameters of size and an assurance around the assessment of risk. And if we can do that, and we can do that effectively and work with the community to do that, and the local authority and other partners, then, you know, that's a win for everyone. What we don't want is a community to be devastated because we haven't set those parameters and those rules. And that's all we are looking to do, provide that unambiguous statement about what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and what our expectations of the community are. But more importantly, I would suggest the local authority partners are as well. So that's all I'll say, Chair, other than to say that the recommendation captures that intent. It does reference the report itself, which I think we've digressed a little bit from, but particularly around recommendation 2B, which is to note the increase in incidents this year and the intention of officers to develop a clear and unambiguous position statement in relation to approved community bonfires, which meet clear safety requirements, and others developed without the appropriate safeguards in place to protect the public. We are here, after all, to protect the public, and that is what we will endeavour to do over the course of 2025. Sure.
Okay, thanks, Chief. So I'll put it to the meeting. Are you able to agree the recommendations as set out on page 237 of the agenda? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you. We move on to item 8, accidental dwelling fire fatality analysis between 2004-5 and 23-24, and I'll hand back to the Chief.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And look, and this is to some degree, it's a really positive story, despite the fact that we are focusing in on fatalities across Merseyside over a 12-month period, but then an extended period, which allows us to really understand the data and the vulnerabilities of individuals at risk from fire across our communities. And the first bit I will draw into, we haven't necessarily developed a one-year reflective look back between 2023 and 24. The reason behind it, we had one fatality. I'll just pause at that particular point in time, because if I go back 35 years when I joined, we were way in excess of 25 deaths each year. So to have one is tragic to the family involved. I absolutely appreciate that, but that is the lowest number of fire deaths on record in Merseyside Fire and Rescue Authority, and it is genuinely down to the work that's done every day in the communities by Mark's teams and others, and firefighters on fire stations getting into most vulnerable, understanding the strategy that we want to adopt, understanding what vulnerability looks like, who's most vulnerable in our communities, and intervening to either provide them with advice or support them through the provision of smoke alarms. And that's extended into are, you know, communities which are blighted by kind of poverty. So right into the heart of the most deprived communities of Merseyside as well, where we recognise that actually sometimes families are choosing to put food on the table rather than a smoke alarm up on the ceiling. And that has been absolutely a driving factor. So deprivation and vulnerability down to a number of factors which actually are determined by the analysis that we do. So I go back to, you know, my kind of complimentary words about Deb's team and how they analyse the data for us. But they do that incredibly well. So we know, unfortunately, to some degree, who is likely to die in fires across Merseyside, and we're able to target our resources in that way. So, notwithstanding the fact that, just given the fact that it was one fire fatality in the 23-24 period, for the obvious reasons of the really front-footed preventative activity, we do present back in this report on page 275 a detailed analysis of the historic numbers of fires that we've responded to over what is almost a 20-year period. And that goes on to detail a number of factors which I'll draw members' attention to. All I would say is be reassured of the fact that we know this. We've known this for a good number of years, and actually, you know, our strategies reflect the risks facing people across Merseyside. And so I'll draw members' attention to page 278, which is the summary document, really, before I go into anything in specific detail. And it talks about people who are likely to die in fires. And between, you know, the period that we've reviewed, so 2004-5 and 2023-24, there were 148 fire deaths due to accidental dwelling fires. These were deaths attributed to 141 fires. You will recognise that on occasion we can lose 2 people in a fire, which is a horrific thought, but self-evidently it does happen. Prior to 2016-17, there was an upward trend in the number of fatalities, but we, through that really insightful interventive work that I've described, and the reason why we are outstanding around prevention, we halted that, and we started to see that decline over the period, you know, and that was followed by low death rates of 4 in 2017-18 and 18-19, but an unprecedented one in the last year in focus. What we do is then analyse it from a district perspective as well as an overall Archer Merseyside perspective. In Wirral we saw 46 deaths, Liverpool 45. When aggregated to incidents per 100,000 population, Wirral has the highest number of deaths with 14.4. And we know that, and we know the areas that we need to focus in, and we know it's inextricably linked to deprivation, and we work with those communities and the local authority particularly. The risk of death in accidental dwelling fires increases with age. We also know that, with ages above 70 being at greatest risk. Our strategy is over 65 because we recognise that actually it's a precursor. People lifestyle starts to change over that period. And notwithstanding, you can have really fit individuals at 65. You can have people who are really struggling at 55. But the fact of the matter is, we know who is most likely and most susceptible, and it's often based on mobility and the fact that more often than not people start to live alone at that particular point in time. There's a slight bias towards male victims, and again, you know, and certainly not some of the life choices of men are different than the life choices of women around alcohol and drugs particularly, and self-evidently they play a part in the number of fatalities, not extensively but somewhat. And then we move on to ethnicity. So, you know, the group in question, 143 victims, 96.6% were white British. Other ethnicities accounted for 5 deaths, which is, you know, 3.4% of deaths across Merseyside against a 8.3 percentage from a census perspective. So, you know, to some degree you are arguably more likely to die if you are white than if you are from an ethnic group. But the numbers are so small that could change in a heartbeat. And in 97 of the 148 fatalities, the victim was the sole occupant. So if you are over 70 years of age, you live alone, you've got mobility difficulties maybe, then, you know, the likelihood you have a fire is the same as probably everyone else. Likely for you to get out of a fire is probably more difficult. But equally, you know, it does link into accidental dwelling fires being more prevalent in areas of deprivation too. That's the stuff we know. But as I say, be reassured, members, that the approach that we adopt, and particularly driven by Mark and his team, has seen fatalities reduced across Merseyside exponentially. And as I said to you, I made a bold statement at one point, and it's self-evident now because I am ultimately leaving. But I said, if we get down to 0.5 deaths across Merseyside, I will leave. We got close. We got close. At one point, I was a bit concerned, but we had, we had 1.5 deaths, so we've come very close. Now, the ambition remains to beat Merseyside on 0.5 deaths in a calendar year. That still remains the aspiration. That's what drives Mark and the team. And self-evidently, we will continue to do that until we get to that position, and then we'll be relentless in our pursuit of maintaining that. We are outstanding in the work that we do in prevention, but self-evidently, the tragic loss for individuals, whether it be 1 or it be 21, for the families and the communities affected by those losses are inextricably painful. Hence the reason why, if you go back to the previous report, we don't want a family to lose anyone to fire. I think that is, whether it be on fire events or it be in a home, that's the basis of the work, and that's the basis of the analysis. The analysis drives our work, it drives our strategy, and it assures ourselves that we are working in the right communities at the right time, and educating them in the right way. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Yep, Councillor Byram.
Thank you. And we are outstanding, and our staff and what they've done in depth over several years has brought us to the position we're in. But for the thousands of people who will be streaming and watching this, if anybody thinks that they are struggling between, yes, hello everybody out there, if they're struggling between putting up a smoke detector or putting food on the table, just get in touch with us and we will make sure that they don't struggle over that issue. That would not be an acceptable struggle. And if Edna wants some smoke detectors, you can have some.
I've got them.
So, but I think there it is. It's, to some extent, I know Mark and his team and Phil and the work has made this difference, but actually there's been lifestyle changes over those years. And when we thought that 20 people dying was just an acceptable statistic, and of course we started to work on it then. And smoking at home, smoking in bed, cooking, the way people cook, using chip pans, flame retardant materials, lifestyle issues, you might say. Our challenge, I think, is to get down to 0, correct, but also make car accidents more survivable, making what now is becoming annual severe weather incidents more survivable. And I won't say that the eye comes off the ball on accidental fire fatalities, but it seems, largely speaking, I mean, the proof's in the pudding. This is just about cracked. We got this not where we want it. 0 is where we want it, but this is as close to that. Bearing in mind, and I have made this point to the Home Office, one fire incident may cause more than one fatality. But we've got to now look at all the other things that happen in people's lives. Urgent attendance for people having medical issues. Now, I know this is a difficult one to deal with, but there's lots of other things that the fire service can do to make the people of Merseyside and the UK, but the people of Merseyside safer in their homes, their beds, their cars, their places of work. And that's the challenge to the authority from now on almost. When we bring a new chief in, apparently we're bringing a new chief in, when we bring the new chief in, the focus perhaps has got to be on all those other things. We mustn't take the focus off this, but there's a lot more to do and achieve as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Finneran.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is, all of us around the table have got a voice here that we can take back to our councils and bring out and give the report what mocks give us, to go out there and tell them about the fire alarms and the other prevention things that goes on. I would willingly, if someone wanted to do a report, I would willingly stand up in the council and give that report to report out to the other members of the council. Because don't forget, we've got, 45 councillors. That's 45 different ways of getting that voice out there. And I think we all owe it to our residents to do that. Because what we found here today, I just think has been such a great help to get, you know, people to be careful and to be more vigilant. Okay, that's
Okay,
all.
thanks. I bring Councillor Thompson in, then Councillor Lamb.
Just an observation really on the origin of ignition sources. It's concerning, isn't it, that candles are still popping up.
Yeah.
It's smoking materials and candles. Now, as somebody who absolutely love candles, I've taken all mine out of the house and have to confess as well at the moment I don't have a smoke detector. Because we've been decorating, but one will be going off. But I've done the same with my daughter-in-law, and I
Have
think...
you got food on the table?
No, sadly, Les, no. I think I've spread that amongst my family, friends, relations, but I think you're absolutely right. We need to keep pushing that. And candles are just such an innocuous thing, aren't they? And I've suddenly realised just how dangerous they are.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, thanks. Real treasure trove of, obviously, it's like really tragic stories in amongst it, but the data that we have access to is amazing. So thank you. Yeah, I've found personally since being on this authority, the work around around prevention is like just endlessly inspiring, and I think it can provide a real blueprint for other areas of work, you know, right across the public sector, specifically, as Les has mentioned, around road safety or road danger reduction, because we don't really get this level of analysis. We kind of let accidents, as Les called them, which we're not supposed to anymore, they just kind of happen. So I find it really inspiring, and there's lots of co-benefits. We've talked around the likelihood of people that are smokers or have problems with alcohol being more susceptible. So there's these excellent like co-benefits as people stop smoking and maybe drink a bit less, they'll become healthier. So I do actually have a request going forward, if we could, because I know within police and road traffic collisions, they've made really good progress to remove that word accident. They don't view collisions as accidents because there's always a reason for it, and I think it's the same within this. So it might, sorry to be a bit annoying, but I wonder if we can change the title of these reports to get rid of the word accidental, because as we've seen from a lot of these stories, they're not accidents, are they? They're people that have got problems elsewhere in their lives that might be smoking or for one reason or another. So if it's not too annoying, I wonder if we could have a think about getting rid of that word.
Okay, sorry, can I just check if anybody else wants to come in at this stage? And come back to the Chief, and if you can pick that point up from Councillor Lamb, sure, please.
Yeah, I'll pick a couple of bits up. So, in regards to resting on our laurels, we've never lost on our laurels in regards to accidental dwelling fires as it currently stands. Because what we do see is societal change. Kind of, you know, the chair's quite right. But equally, we've seen an influx of lithium batteries now, which presents us with different problems. So one thing starts to dissipate as something else comes to replace it, and we have to be really vigilant around that. In respect of the broader communications back into local authorities, we would welcome that opportunity to speak to members of councils. We've got the 5 area managers who were all designated into a local authority area, and and if it can be facilitated, we can come and talk at length around the work that we do, and specifically focusing in on maybe the asks of council members in respect of them reaching out into their communities. So that is something we will look to develop following this kind of conversation. And finally, in relation to accidental dwelling fires, it's a national term. You will understand, and it's a way of an ability for us to consistently benchmark performance against one service and another, and impact on communities against another. That doesn't stop me taking that away, to be perfectly honest with you, and seeing whether we would change it from accidental dwelling fires to fires in the home, maybe, or something to just redefine it in some way, shape or form. And then you have a little bit more control over it in a similar vein to trying to tackle the road traffic collisions from that perspective. But the work that we do is exceptional. You are quite right as well, and it inspires me every single day as well. So the report kind of speaks to that, and we're very proud of the work that we do. So and we will continue to do so.
Okay, thanks very much. So can we agree the recommendation set out on page 271 of the agenda, please? Agreed, thank you. Move on to item 9, workplace wellbeing charter results. And again, I'll hand back to the Chief.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Again, I'll move rapidly through this one. The purpose of the report is to update members on the positive outcomes following the authority's application for accreditation via the Workplace Wellbeing Charter and recommendations. It's recommended that members note the incredibly positive outcomes following the authority's application, and equally note that officers will now review and address a small number of additional recommendations contained within the report. A little bit of background: the Health at Work is a nationally recognised consultative service established to help organisations to build healthy and safe workplaces. And the Workplace Wellbeing Charter is a nationally recognised accreditation that both validates and certifies an organisation's dedication to employee wellbeing. And then I'll just ask members, just if you turn over the page to page 300, it describes then the areas that were under focus.
Sorry, Chair, for the check. We were just asking them what something meant. I wasn't listening.
Okay. So it's fine. I'll carry on. In relation to page 300, it describes the areas of focus. So from leadership, absent management, health and safety, mental health being, intoxicants. So intoxicants in relation to drug and alcohol and how we manage some of those things in the workplace. Environmental sustainability and culture and inclusion. And then what I would suggest is it goes on to identify what was awarded to the service in relation to that particular activity. So paragraph 8 describes the service and excellence being the highest award you can achieve. Excellence in leadership, absence management, health and safety management, mental health, intoxicants to be achieved, and we come back to those little bits of recommendations. Physical health excellence and environmental sustainability commitment, and inclusion and culture, interestingly, in the kind of context of where the fire and rescue services have been more broadly, not Merseyside, is as excellent in regards to the work we do around culture and inclusion. And the report that kind of underpins that is captured on page 303 onwards. But what I would draw members' attention to is page 335, which is referenced under culture and inclusion. It says Merseyside Fire and Rescue Services evidence that they're striving to create a safe, inclusive culture across the organisation. ED&I policy and various family-friendly policies such as IVF, maternity, paternity, neonatal, adoption, flexible work and agile, hybrid, special leave and carers policy, family-friendly policies ensure a respectful, inclusive workplace and support employees balance their professional and personal lives. It then goes on at the very tail end of the report to detail some recommendations which we will act on as is contained within recommendations. And interestingly, again, it says under culture inclusion, there are no recommendations put forward in relation to this provision. Now, that is not us resting on our laurels in any way, shape or form, but it's a independent review of the things that we've got in place, and probably evidences the fact, if members are aware of yesterday, we had the staff engagement results back, which give us an 88% staff engagement level, which is the highest on record, again, for Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service, and arguably some aspects of that being 26 points above the national average of fire and rescue services, particularly around leadership and vision of the strategic team. So again, should be reassuring around the work that we're doing around health and well-being of our staff. Thanks, Chair. I'll take any questions.
Thanks, Chief. I think Councillor Finneran had a question. Did you?
No.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said at the beginning.
But you've explained what it was now.
Right. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, Councillor Grace.
Yeah, again, this I feel ties in very much with everything else we've been discussing this afternoon, that none of this just happens. You know, you've credited Debbie and Jackie and Mark with prevention, that a huge amount of work is going into this. And from my perspective on the national EDI is that Merseyside Fire and Rescue is exceptionally proactive. And I think that this is the result of a lot of coordinated and hard work and leadership.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? No? In that case, can we agree the recommendation on page 299 of the agenda, please. Okay. We move on now to item 10, procurement of powered respirator suits. And again, I'll hand back to the Chief.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This shouldn't take too long, really, given the fact that the ask is more of a Home Office one around procurement of respiratory protective suits, but facilitated through ourselves as lead authority. But the purpose of the report is to update members on the outcome of the procurement exercise for the provision of powered respiratory protective suits. Recommendations recommended that members approve the award of the contract to Respirx Limited for the procurement of powered suits, as said, for the value of $3,120,000, and that's size is because it's a national procurement exercise, not rather than the Merseyside procurement exercise. And the replacement of the PRPS is critical to maintaining the Fire and Rescue Services response to and readiness for chemical, biological, radiological and nuclear incidents. The tender was put out and the authority only received one bid from a supplier, which was Respirx Limited, and so the ask for approval is that we would act on that and as a result of that purchase the said equipment for distribution nationally. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Any comments, questions? Yeah, Councillor Byram.
Just to remind members that we are, as the Chief said, the national lead for this type of procurement. And the Home Office like this. They ain't got it anywhere else. Where members who are completely disconnected with the supply chain can overview and scrutinise these decisions. We are passing through a purchase process on behalf of the entire country, being scrutinised by members here in Merseyside of the process that's gone about. And it's another example of where we are absolutely leading the country.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, Councillor Finnan, did you indicate? Sorry. Anybody else? Yeah, yep.
Can I just ask members, along with the current recommendation, that there's a typographical error that didn't pull through on publishing, which is just the date of the report. So if you're content, if the report's approved, for me to also amend the date to reflect today's date.
Agreed? Yes. Okay, and the recommendation itself is agreed, yeah? Thank you very much. Unless anybody tells me otherwise, I think that's the final item. Apart from it, if you just note that the next meeting will be on Thursday the